Welcome to the Asset Talk on ESG and Trade Finance, produced in association with DBS, as part of the DBS ESG Leadership Series. We are delighted to have with us Mark Troutman, Managing Director, Group Head of Sales, Global Transaction Services at DBS, and also with us is Sriram Muthukrishnan, Managing Director, Group Head of Trade Product Management at DBS. Today's topic on the Asset Talk is on unlocking finance for SMEs in the supply chain. Let's dive deeper into the opportunities to unlock financing, especially for SMEs. You talked about some of the incentives around ESG compliance and using the carrot strategy. But what about using ESG as an opportunity to unlock financing for SMEs?
The example I gave of the multi-tier supply chain is one, because as you go down multiple tiers of supply chain, we find that the third and the fourth tiers of suppliers are often extremely small. And these are usually the unbanked part of supply chains. It's usually easier for a large brand owner's first tier supplier to get financing because every bank, every financier can see the direct linkage. But once they move 2-3 tiers down, it's very difficult. So that is clearly a way that you can, incentivize smaller tier suppliers to play ball, and in return for that, they get financing at a decent rate. Otherwise, if they're going to receive financing on a standalone basis, typically the costs are prohibitive. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. The second one is the example I gave of the grain agri trader sourcing grains from Australia, for example. Is one where we are able to also cut out the middlemen. So we are able to put, financing and the final settlement against the goods that they have, supplied into the hands of the farmers and the aggregators much more quickly. And that really means that they're happy to be part of such a program because they can see the money come in quickly. There's the profitability is a bit higher because the middleman is not there. So we got to really look at each one of these. We also have recently, you must have seen in the press about the program we launched with Inditex for, this is working in India for the growing of sustainable cotton, for organic cotton. And this is really important for India as one of the largest, cotton growers in the world. But bulk of it is not used for organic cotton. It is basically grown along using very traditional means, which is leading to soil erosion and depletion. And only about we saw that only about 2 to 3% of the total area under cotton cultivation actually follows organic practices. Now, what we did was we worked with Inditex as well as some of the farmer producer organizations and NGOs to start looking at which are the farmers are actually willing to move to this, more sustainable practices. We work with the NGOs to make sure that all the inputs that are being given to them are of a sustainable nature, are good for soil, are good for the final produce. And in return for that, we were able to give them again financing at a much earlier stage. And this was basically directly going from the cooperatives and the NGOs. The goods were being directly, sourced. So again, we were able to improve the profitability, provide financing in the hands of the farmers much earlier, and also give support in using the right inputs. So these are examples of where we can actually work to make a change, using technology and, of course, working with the right corporates, who also have the right strategic intent.
Mark, as ESG becomes much more prevalent, what sort of advice would you give companies looking to incorporate sustainability into their supply chain or into their whole treasury practice?
It's clear that one has to take a view of a much broader view of their supply chain and we think incorporate digitalization into what they do. So many companies have their own procurement systems, they have their processes and their practices, but stepping back and taking a broader view of the impact that they could have with the purchases or their own procurements to make a positive change out into the future. But it starts with, I think, defining objectives, understanding at the corporate level, at the company level, what, are there some of the UN SDGs that they most align to in their own corporate ethos or their values that are relevant for the business that company operates in or the industry that company operates in. And then take these and translate them into objectives that they would expect of their suppliers. And then that's where, in coming back to Sriram's earlier comments, being able to use technology to track and monitor what the companies are doing with their suppliers are doing against the objectives that have been set, having ongoing communication with, through up and down the supply chain, looking through the tier 1 suppliers into the tier 2s, the tier 3s, particularly in sensitive industries. And we would probably argue only after this, then look at kind of what does the incentivization of the various stakeholders look like or need to look like in order to help achieve some kind of migration. If you think of kind of the various utility companies that you probably subscribe to there in Hong Kong, Daniel, over the last couple of years, you no doubt will have been moved from paper invoicing to some kind of electronic, and there's been different ways that that's occurred, whether it's a credit, a one-time credit, or it's just sort of adopt and feel positive about it, or self-select. All of these are valuable. It's not just about giving rebates to somebody just to do good. And clearly this is going to take time, so we all have to keep at it. Those would be some thoughts I'd put to play here.
Sriram, you shared with us numerous examples, but what's next for ESG in trade finance that could accelerate the future of sustainability?
Daniel, I think that the examples I gave you, in my view, are still just the beginning of the trend. While sustainability is not new, I think it has gotten added legs because of the push from the UN Sustainable Goals, and also the COVID impact, as Mark mentioned. Because of all that, people have woken up to a different way of looking at their lives. I think mindset has changed towards a more sustainable mindset, whether it comes to own personal health, well-being, or of the community around them. So we therefore see that there's a greater interest in this conversation. So from our perspective, if I were to see that, throw my mind forward, I think it would be about massively multiplying the number of conversations that we are having, seeing a much greater uptick in the actual deployment of these programs that you talked about. I think that one of the challenges also is in the same industry, there are multiple different metrics. Right now, the corporates, tend to design metrics around their own corporate goals or corporate culture, but not necessarily at an industry level. So one of the things which would be beneficial is, whether it's rubber industry, whether it's apparel, whether it is grains, whether it is, any other area, there is a much more greater synergy in terms of what metrics, corporates are shooting towards. And I think that will help a lot. And those are things where we will see some convergence happening. And I also think it will be beneficial if that happens, because if you look at supply chains, sometimes they are quite commingled or intermingled. What I mean by that is that 2 or 3 different brand owners may actually be going to the same, supplier to manufacture the goods or be part of the manufacturing process. If you take the example of the apparel industry, a typical, contractor or a fabricator in Bangladesh must be catering to anywhere between 7 and 15 brands. Now, having to align his production processes to 7 different, matrices which are not exactly aligned is going to actually increase the cost of doing business for that particular contractor. So that is something which we are really looking forward to seeing, where there's a greater convergence of sustainability metrics. The second thing that we are looking forward to is also seeing how we can translate some of this into real world benefits. I think that is starting to happen. And I think that will become much more because customer preferences are changing. But again, it will be a question of, in Asia, we see that many of the consumers, are starting only now to wake up to the benefits of looking at, of the goods that they consume. The appreciation has been a bit lagging in the past. We now see a big uptick in that. And then, of course, we're also seeing that between different, regulators and governments, also there is a different level of push that is being given. They're not uniform, they're not homogeneous. These are some of the areas where I think there are challenges, but I think there is greater appreciation that these needs to be fixed.